And I was just so worried about what I was going to do and where I was going to be and if it was going to be good enough and if I was smart enough. And going back, I mean, entertainment, I think it's part of my story. I learned a ton. It was really fun. Like, what a cool kind of world to be a part of. If I had my career brain on, I would have like gone into consulting or something that like actually taught me business ideals or like some kind of skill set. So maybe there's that component, but I think the like emerging theme, which is more continual and one that I'm still trying to be like for myself to learn, is and embrace, is just, yeah, this idea that like enjoy the moment and not like freaking worry so much.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Fast Friends. We're really excited to have Taylor Ritzel with us today. Taylor is such a fun story. She was a young and bright-eyed and super excited national team athlete on our women's team, part of the repeat story of after the women won 2008 to pursue their legacy of 11 years of undefeated. And I was a grumpy old man at the time. And I remember, Taylor, when you came on the scene, everybody was like, wow, this athlete is going to kick everybody's ass. And it was really cool and really amazing to see you enter that Princeton training center and live up to that hype. And we here at the Medal Factory are so excited to hear your story, and we're so excited for the young rowers out there to hear it. And mostly, we're just so filled with so much gratitude for you being here with us. So thank you.
No, thank you guys so much for having me. What an honor. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah. So what we like to do is Justin's going to do his best job as a coxswain and get you hyped up for the race. So Justin, please let the crowd know why Taylor is here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Dan and Taylor. Thank you for being on. I think just to set the table for everybody on who's Taylor, a little bit of background, and then we'll let you tell it in your own words. But as far as, the internet can tell us, and then you'll tell us, fill in the blanks. Taylor's originally from Colorado, high school athlete, pretty competitive, but winds up going to Yale. So comes to the East Coast, graduated in 2010 with a degree in history, but while there, was a member of their team, helped them win 3 NCAA championships, earned 3 All-American honors, and then went on to row on the national team, to Dan's point, and then won gold in 2012 in London, and, won some world championships and set some world records along the way on the way there. And then I think the really interesting thing, too, that we probably will get into later in the show is after rowing, would go on and work at some of the biggest brands in the world, right? Hulu, Netflix, worked at private equity, and is now chief people officer at Cedar Solutions Group. And in between all that, wound up doing no small feat and getting a master's at Northwestern. So welcome to the show. That is a quick synopsis. You'll obviously give us the real details, but super impressive and super excited to hear your story.
Man, awesome. Thank you. Well, it makes it sound easy and like I actually planned it out.
Way, it's a good segue. Why don't you share with us kind of like, we like to ask, why do you think you're here, and kind of what's your origin story, if you will, in your own words?
Yeah. So I think, I live back in Denver. I grew up here. I was a swimmer, and I thought, like, I remember staying up late watching the Olympics and swimming, mostly in my parents' like bedroom, getting to sleep on the floor, and wanting to swim in the Olympics forever. And then ended up through a series of unfortunate events getting mono my junior year when it was time to recruit, and just honestly not being that fast in swimming. And so my mom actually had been the one to reach out to rowing coaches at some of the schools I wanted to go to. And so in my mind, I was, the oldest sibling. And so I had took it upon myself to reach out to the swim coaches at Yale, Princeton, and Harvard. And for some reason, I thought I should, and could definitely go both to all of those places. Both my parents went to Colorado State. I grew up on a ranch here. And so definitely wasn't like a family thing. But anyway, long story short, I ended up going on some recruiting trips or visiting the coaches while there with my mom, actually. And really from there on, like, stumbled into rowing. And I think that was kind of the first time in which I left something that was like super familiar. As I think we all are pretty type A and probably routine oriented. The idea of doing something and just kind of going with your gut, while exciting, can also be hard to, be willing to do and jump in full speed ahead. And so, yeah, I left like swimming, which was my whole identity, and like big chunk of my friend group, it felt like. And ended up, I was recruited by the Yale coaches the day after I returned from that trip, literally having never even touched an oar. So they took a huge huge test, leap of faith on me and chance on me. And so, yeah, from there on, I just kind of like honestly stumbled forward into rowing. I felt like I'd really almost like suffered through swimming for a long time. I grew 8 inches in high school. I would beat everybody in practice and then just get my ass kicked in races. And so I was like, is something wrong with me? Can't I do this? And then just really felt like I finally found my sport and I love racing, but I love racing with other people. I realized I don't want to race by myself. So anyway, that's kind of a long-winded way of saying I think rowing and sort of my entry into rowing has helped me really like I think have more conviction or at least I guess willingness to kind of trust my gut and sort of what feels right and sort of the next stage or next step. And so far I think it served me pretty well, but I also am still trying to figure out what I want to do. So, time will tell, I suppose.
Well, one that is, I mean, that's an amazingly quick and I think not accurate is the wrong word, but precise synopsis. What I'm really intrigued about is like to your point, right? You were swimming, and I think that you touched on something that is really resonating with me. I have two nieces that swam, and kind of that pressure of them in the pool, and you talk about that athlete identity, and giving that up or changing it or leaving that behind in that friend group, and you articulate that so well now. When at this time, this kind of world is opening up to you, and as you mentioned, the HYP is what you looked at, but it wasn't necessarily a family legacy. So you kind of gravitated towards what are three really huge rivalries in rowing. And I'm kind of curious, is it when rowing kind of became an idea, was it the thought that that's where rowing happens? Was it Ivy Leagues? Was it the fact that they're prestigious educations? Was the combination of the both? Did someone push you in that direction? Because I mean, it obviously worked out for Will Porter. Like, obviously very smart to call you the next day, and shout out to Tim and the Bulldogs for what they did at NCAA's. So,
Yeah, I know.
but I think that to me, that's really intriguing. That call to the sport. Carrie Simmons made a funny gesture. It's like once rowing gets its claws into you, and it seems the opposite is that swimming had its claws in you, and rowing came to be this relief. So, tell us a little bit about that. Like that. You're forming this new identity real time and seeing this like lack of support from the results in swimming, but this instant, hey, come with us. And what's that juxtaposition feel like?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think at the time I was really nervous about it. Looking back, it's easy to say like it was just kismet and it was meant to happen. But I started swimming since the age of 5, and so I'd been doing year round since the age of 8. I was literally remembering that I had a coach once who would have us swim in jeans. So I was like literally swimming in jeans as like a way to like drag us down. But when I was 8, and like I was doing 3 days during the summer sometimes. By the time I was 10, so I was like, but I loved it. I loved how hard it was. I loved just showing up every day for practice. I didn't want to go on vacation. I wanted to like go every day. So to me, it was just my life. And yeah, my social circle, both at school, because I swim for my high school team and then for the club team, and my best friends were on my club team. And so when I got mono, I had to pull out of the state championship meet and also sectionals. At the time, looking back, it's like, okay, no big deal, who cares? But oh my gosh, I just kind of realized, for better or for worse, I think, you're a high school kid and you're just, especially as an athlete, you're so focused on yourself. You're so focused on what you want to do next. And not one of those close friends like really reached out or came to visit or anything. And I probably would have done the same thing, to be honest, if I were in their shoes. But I think that was pretty illuminating, and things changed a little bit after that for me with them, certainly. And then once I kept trying to swim. I swam all throughout that summer right before senior year. As I was recruiting, I was still wanting to recruit for swimming, but the schools that were recruiting me just weren't the ones that I was interested in. And so I was trying to be proactive and reaching out to the swim coaches at Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. Again, I have literally no idea why I chose those. I think maybe we had like a girl in our neighborhood who was the captain of the Princeton swim team at one point. I think I really looked up to her. So I think that was maybe why that was my dream. But yeah, and then my mom, I mean, both my parents were entrepreneurs. And so if anything, they were really good at sort of thinking outside the box, particularly my mom. And so I was pissed at her because I was like, I don't want to waste my time like on this boat. I'm so tired of the coach's lunch. I don't even know what I'm looking at, And, but like, so freaking yeah, entitled and probably annoying. But yeah, I mean and then UVA invited me out too for rowing. Wisconsin did. Once my mom was like, "Oh wait, what are the good schools?" I think my mom honestly kind of did the research after that once Yale started showing interest. And so I remember I went to like UVA when they had a race in Wisconsin, and I think those were the only ones.
Yeah, just to go back because my jaw finally came up off the floor when you told me that you got recruited the day after you went for a visit after never touching an oar at probably one of the best women's rowing institutions in the world at the time.
I'm
Crazy.
picking my job off the
Still,
floor for
yeah.
jeans, swimming in jeans.
So
I don't know about that
what
training tactic.
what
It's
was the
wild.
sales pitch? I want to know what was the sales pitch of here's Taylor. She's never rowed, but you need her on your team. Like, can you just explain? I mean, because again, the four of us all kind of took this like long, windy road of getting recruited and what have you, and touched the oar of the boat for a really long time before we got phone calls. So we'd love to understand, like, gosh, amazing sales pitch, or karma. But yeah, I would love to, and I'm not saying this in a derogatory way. I'm just like in awe. Um, if you could just kind of
No,
help me
it's
explain like
crazy.
what that talk track
Yeah.
was.
No, it's wild. I think I benefited a lot from that time. I think it just happened to be kind of right in the heart of women's rowing starting to become really competitive and still riding the wave of Title IX, which was huge, and walk on still being kind of a driving force. And knowing what it's like now, it's insane how competitive it's gotten. There are no more walk ons. I don't think this would ever happen today. But so I think I'm really honestly super fortunate that the timing was just right. I think Yale hadn't been super great. I mean, they made the NCAA's, but they weren't they weren't on the podium for sure. And so I think it was partially that. And then, Kate Maloney, who was the freshman coach and the recruiter, like I think she really, as much as I love Will Porter and always will, like Kate Maloney was really the one to kind of put her like voice forward and really stick her neck out for me, I think. And so yeah, I don't know why they kind of called me back and were willing to. I think they just saw that swimmers, or they thought swimmers just, I mean, I do think swimmers make pretty great rowers because we're used to just the same motion over and over and kind of have that like very long embedded sort of volume work that, people we've done since very early ages. Yeah, I don't know, but it was interesting because once I got recruited and decided to kind of go for it with rowing, yeah, just the stories of like trying to find anybody here in Colorado who knew what the heck they were doing was really interesting. Like the first time I got an erg, it was literally a guy who said he rode at Oxford, but it was like I think he did like maybe like 1 week or something with like one of the schools at Oxford. So the first time I ever got an erg, he
Crazy.
came out at 10 and he said do a 2K. So that was my literal first ever time on an erg. So I got to start somewhere, I suppose. But went to Crash Bees my senior year of high school. Spring break, I flew out to Connecticut and like Connecticut Boat Club with Liz Tron. Like she was willing to like just like take me out during the middle of the day to try and teach me. I went to like a junior camp it was like a 2-day thing in December where they were trying to like it was like a West Coast sort of like see which athletes you want to invite to camp. So I was invited to junior camp that next year, even though I had no idea what the hell I was doing at all. I showed up so it was kind of a whirlwind, but I think once I sort of like was willing to kind of decide this is it and I'm excited. I think honestly I should have mentioned this before. A big part for me was that there's like this theme of feeling chosen. And I know that sounds, I don't know if you guys ever felt that, but it's like Yale wanted me. And like how lucky am I that they want me? And so that just went really far. Cause I mean Harvard and Princeton were both like, yeah, we're interested, get in, you can walk on, but like we'll see, because I think Princeton had recently been burned by recruiting a non-rower, and then that person kind of got in and then quit. And so, but yeah, the fact that Yale wanted me just like meant a lot to me, because I had come off of this moment of feeling like all of these years of work I'd done was for nothing because I wasn't even going to be able to swim in college. And so I think that was probably a big part of that decision for me. But yeah, in terms of why they chose me, honestly, great question.
No, it's great. It's amazing.
I mean, I can't imagine living through this as a 18-year-old. Like that's kind of where, and is whether or not the editor in chief is going to speak up or not, because he lives this on the other side, every day now, being at Cornell. I mean, Luke, I just feel like I'm looking at you and you still can't get over the genes. Like Luke swam I'm in high school too. Like Luke swam
Yeah,
in high
this
school too in San Diego.
yeah, this really resonates with me in the sense that I too thought, I was swimming like twice a day, 10 years old, 12 years old, into high school, and just being like, yeah, it's swimming, and seeing the Olympics and watching swimming and being like, wow. And it was the Olympics. And like that was it. That was the first drip. For me, it was like back in 92 in Barcelona, I think, when I was looking at it. So we're probably watching different Olympics. I think you're a
I
year or two
mean, not
younger
that
than I
far.
am.
I
But
think I was
anyway,
like Atlanta or
yeah, but that resonates. But I've never had genes, never had the genes. But it's still like it is to Justin's point and everyone else's point. It's wild to think that all these top institutions were like, "Oh, you're done with swimming? Like, yeah, rowing, let's go." Like that's fascinating. It's fascinating, and yeah, yeah.
Well, you did a great job of the time capsule of where the NCAA was, and talk about what a what a great night to have you on as the NCAA versus House that just got settled. Like it's another because it's going to change, right? We don't know where it's going to change, but it's going to change. And you were there right in the middle of that really powerful change, and women's rowing did reap those benefits. But let's not just give Yale like all the credit. Like, and Justin, I know if do you have something before I jump ahead here?
No, no. I mean, it's a fascinating story, and I think that yeah, I mean, Dan, we were all a couple of years earlier than that, and you're right, it was a huge just surge of Title IX women's rowing programs, 50, 60 deep scholarships at certain places, for women's programs to stand up against football programs that are, in the Big Ten. I'll just call it at that at the time. So I think that, yeah, like it's just super cool. I think that I love hearing all these origin stories, especially from folks that have never touched an oar before for collegiate rowing. So I think it's just, this is probably one of the more unique ones. We get a lot of like, I was tall, I was walking through a cafeteria and the coach spotted me. This was a little bit more of like ambition turned into reality a thought that became a reality. So that's just where my head's spinning a little bit, but I think it's an amazing story.
thank you.
So, I mean, shit, that's why I've been psyched to have Taylor on. It's like I mean, you're one of the best American rowers ever.
By the way, like we're gonna get into it. It's not just like this was like some magical thing that happened and then you didn't do anything with it. Like I think
Yeah.
that's the whole point here. We're gonna get there.
I'm also, I mean, I'm in all of your parents. You said they're both entrepreneurial, and I think that's a fun way to live if it goes the right way as a kid, and your mom being so resourceful and like not letting your talent sit idle. I think just observing a young person who's willing to not only be willing to push themselves in those 3 days, but I think that the way that you express it is there's no angst in your voice when you look on. It's all like fond memories of even the talking about the genes, and like that's going to keep coming up. I know it. You say it with humor and excitement, and like I did that, and I think that's it's a really important thing for the parents that listen to the show that know that you drove that process. Like it's obvious that you drove that process, and that your parents and your mom were being really supportive. Two, that she saw the opportunity and made sure that you were capitalizing on it, but it was still you going in there and saying, I don't know about this. It was still you that sat on the erg and pulled that 2K. And that feeling of chosen is real. Akil Abdullah said it great. There's a delusion to becoming an elite athlete where you do feel special. In the light of swimming, one of my friends from the '08 team, Eric Vent, we talked about the hardest thing about the Olympics is that you think it is all about you, and then you realize that the goddess of Nike loves lots of people.
Yeah.
I think after the fact. So, but you had this chosen moment, but you capitalized on it. And that gratefulness that you felt for that chosen moment, you went for it. And the roller coaster you went on to me is really interesting because you're in Colorado, you're switching your identity, you go to this camp in December, and then you go all the way to Connecticut Boat Club in Norwalk, Connecticut. And like now I'm hooked because that's where I grew up. Right. I know there's magic in that water because that's where I started rowing when I was 10. So complete opposite end of it is at 10 years old. My Olympic dreams kind of happened on that water. And so to know that there's that connection is really cool. And I never knew that. and then you kind of mosey on up to New Haven, right? So from Colorado to New Haven, Connecticut, and now you're at Yale. So could you take us a little bit into this, as the fairies are guiding you on this journey, you kind of wake up one day in your Yale dorm room, and what did you think? Where you're like, I'm going to make an impact here? Am I going to just go for the ride? Like, where was your headspace at that point?
Yeah. Funny, this has come up recently for me. We just had our 15-year reunion, which was fun, a couple weeks ago, and I was back on campus, and it was just a cool moment for me because I think walking around, I'm sure I don't know if you guys have felt this, but walking around, you really notice how beautiful it is, or just being back and you have all these great memories, and then you remember like, oh, I didn't enjoy it as much as I could have because I was just stressed out about the next erg test or the final or whatever. So it was fun to be back and just like be more appreciative and grateful. Maybe it's just nostalgia, but yeah, I mean, I remember I got to Yale and I'm like a serial overpacker, so I brought shit that I had no business bringing. I brought like my swim parka, for an example. Like, why would I ever wear that? It was disgusting. It was like red, like fur inside the, whatever, the coat. And I did this like 4-day camping trip for freshmen called Foot. And I got back to campus. I was really sick. I'd had like either too much iodine or not enough. So I was like not feeling great with the water I was having. Yeah, my dorm room ended up being like so much smaller than I thought. That like it wasn't set up. We had to wait till the next Monday for like the bunk beds to be bunked, and I had way too much shit. And my parents were there, and I was like, just not. It was like the not the way that I wanted to start my weekend, at college. And so my poor parents, I was just like probably not very fun to be around. And then once they left, I was like, oh man, I should have enjoyed it more. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think what was funny to me, the transition from swimming to rowing was really interesting. And Luke, I'm curious if it's the same for you. I actually thought I was going to do both. So I really wanted to row and swim. I still was kind of like thinking swimming could be interesting, but was very committed to rowing and I knew that I was going to row. I don't know how I would have ever done that anyway, but swimming, I guess, is technically winter. But I thought rowing training, and again, I think it's really even like certainly the way that college do their training now, as you all know, is like crazy compared to the way, and I think Yale wasn't as intense. I mean, we would, go in the water every day, but then any sort of like double practices, we would maybe have like once or twice a week, and then I would just do stuff on my own. But yeah, I thought the training was easy. I was like, this is nothing. I'm used to doing way more training. So that was like my first reaction. And then my second reaction was the racing was actually a lot harder. I didn't realize you had to like um, go all out the whole race. Like I literally had race plans in my head for a 200 swim. Maybe that's why I wasn't very good at swimming because those are only supposed to be like 2 minutes long races or less. So I yeah, that was my biggest takeaway from rowing at first, where like I thought the training was not that hard and I was doing extras. And then I thought the racing was the hardest thing I'd ever done, and certainly had to take a few easy strokes at the head of the Charles. I remember that, or in any kind of races we would have. So it was like just kind of an opposite approach at first. I don't know. I think I remember feeling like it was exciting because I think with swimming I'd swam so long and was just not seeing improvement, and I think it had become a little mental, so that I just really was, I was very stressed to try and hit time so that I could get recruited. It felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. Whereas with rowing, there was nothing to do but get better. And like, that is just so fun. It's so fun to do that when you're part of a team where you're actually like kind of decent to begin with. Like I was put in the varsity pretty much the first race. And so like, that's crazy, even though, it's my novice year. I don't know why. I think it was my erg score. And then it was only up from there. And so I just remember it. And that season too, my freshman year, we went undefeated for the first time since 1976 or something. So I thought that's honestly what rowing was like. I was like, oh, you just like go undefeated. This is great. I think I had a little bit of a fairy tale freshman year, reality hit, but
What a, I mean, I'm really blown away by the training is easy and the racing is hard.
yeah,
That's, what did you think was hard about it besides the effort?
I think, well, I like was just such an upper body athlete. I was a distance swimmer. Like, I think still am not as strong as I should be. That's probably why I got injured all the time. Um, like I could bench probably more than I could squat. Like I could not squat very much, but I could bench a lot. And so when I got to college, just like I had no leg strength really. And so I had to build all of that up and really just like figure out how to find power. And so I think just like I guess like putting it like turning on that mechanism of like power and endurance was just very different than what I was used to. And I think just, everything is full. I mean, I think the way we would train too, which I think they're doing a little differently now because they're doing so much more volume, but we would go full pressure all the time. And that's like how I think the Ivies kind of stayed competitive, to be honest. And so I just was getting used to that. So practice wasn't as bad because I think I could temper it, or maybe I wasn't going as hard as I should have. But then in racing, you want to go as hard as you can for your team. And I just died the first couple of races, those head races. So I don't know if it was just like getting used to tapping into that power mechanism, or like my legs finally getting stronger, or honestly just like hitting a new gear. I don't know if I'd ever raced like that before, to be honest, which was maybe the problem.
Did you feel like having the team to both rely on, but also depend on you changed your perspective? Like, did that help you find a deeper level to push, or was it out
100%.
of respect, fear, everything?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like fear that I would be the one to mess it up. Like respect that my team is depending on me. I'll do whatever it takes. Like I still have that mentality when I go play pickleball, even though I'm terrible. Like I get frustrated because not because I'm not going to win, because I get super competitive, obviously, but because I'm like letting my teammate down, even though like they probably don't care. But I like can't get out of my head about it.
Wait, you're competitive? No,
Yeah,
no
I
way.
know we probably, but
Nobody's
you
here
guys have
competitive.
actual hand-eye coordination. What am I kidding? Rowers don't. Justin,
No,
you
but
probably do.
I'd like to think so.
what did you just ask if Justin was competitive?
No, if he has
No, if I
hand-eye
had hand-eye
coordination,
coordination, we already know I'm competitive.
Yeah.
we already know none of us do.
I was gonna say, Justin is the most quietly competitive person I know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, so take us a little bit. I mean, I think that the origin story is phenomenal, and I appreciate you diving into those details. Just to help us kind of set the stage as to another chapter there. So take us into the mindset of like, at what point, you're at Yale, you go undefeated, putting up seems like a pretty decent big erg score. At what point do you start saying to yourself like, I think I'm pretty good? Or did that ever start to creep in where you're like, wait, like I'm good at this, or I'm getting good at this? When do you think that toggle switched? And I really appreciated you talking about the high improvement behavior methodology and mindset that you had as far as like swimming was potentially, a very marginal, whereas this had a long runway of improvement opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can give you a little bit of a breakdown of the Yale years. I think I just, because my erg was strong, I just was noticed pretty quickly. So I was invited to the junior camp before my freshman year. So I hadn't really even spent much time on the water at all. So when I knew I was going to be invited, I would go up to Cherry Creek Reservoir, which was like a like 50-minute drive in the mornings, and like found another coach who really helped and like tried to get me in a boat. And so I at least like rode a handful of times before trying out for junior team stuff. And I was one of the top ergs there, but then like ended up getting like a rib fracture up here, which means I was doing something really weird.
Oh.
And so came home and then went off to Yale. So did not make that team. And then after my freshman year, I was invited to the under 23 camp, and I was the last one for that team. And so that I think like really fueled me. And I think I was just pissed, And so I went into the next year. The stroke, Rachel Jeffers was our stroke my freshman year, who I love. But it was a hard legacy to kind of feel like I could fill or stand up to. Certainly, and will like to always put that over my head all for the next 3 years. But so he put me in stroke as a sophomore, and the stress and pressure of having just won the national championship and then having to try and do it again um was a lot. I don't think we had any seniors in that boat. Oh no, we had one, Jamie Redmond. And so it was just a young boat and stressful, but we ended up winning again, which was awesome. We lost sprints and then won. And I was then invited, or that was, I guess, summer 2028. I did not want to do under 23s. I decided to go to Uganda with like a free thing that they had at Yale, which I should have done more of, where you can find all these like programs where they'll give you scholarships. Worked at a small brokerage firm that literally had nothing for me to do. So I organized a closet all summer, basically, and worried about getting malaria, which was really just food poisoning every day. But I refused to not eat street food. So that was my own problem. But while I was there, I was training on my own, and I vividly remember watching the '08 Olympics, and I watched rowing. I'm sure watched you, Dan. And I just I was like, I want to do this. I want to be there. I belong there. I know it. I know I can. And I obviously like watched the U.S. women win. And Will would always have us watch tape, at the time tape, probably DVD, I don't know, probably still tape, of that boat training when he went out to practice and watch it practice. So I feel like I kind of like knew them weirdly, even though obviously I didn't. And so, yeah, I think that was kind of the moment that it clicked. And so then the next 2 years, really, I mean, I was still training seriously before that, but really committed to rowing. And so, we went to Henley, women's Henley the next summer. Then I did under 23 stuff. Then, it was kind of off to the races after that.
Got it. All right. I gotta ask, because it is important, but what was your erg?
Yeah, well, so what's crazy, it just man, my record just got broken. So they have this,
All right, so first of all, before we get to the number, my record just got broken. So like your erg as a
Did you told us about the 15-year anniversary.
yeah.
So.
so let's they're just reset. This is what's so fun about the show, is that we're all friends, but there's this common, the whole idea of being an elite rower is just such a special bond, because you know what it takes. And it's just one of those things we always say is like, if you don't know, you don't know. So not only are you this like unicorn of a walk-on / recruit, you have this undeniable desire to work, which is rarer than people think in an athlete, where they actually embrace the training. You show up, create an undefeated season, fill the shoes of Rachel Jeffers and that crew, and repeat. And then you also just subtly like drop, as I ask for an erg score, well, my record. So like you're setting a record within 2 years of learning a sport at one of the oldest women's rowing programs in the world, which without the Yale's women crew, there would be no Title IX. So please tell us, what was your record-setting erg score?
Yes. Well, so in college, I was actually technically the third fastest in the 2K. There was a woman, Maria Stevens, who graduated before I got there. I think she tried to do some national team stuff, which, I mean, so strong. And then it's funny, I actually credit a lot of my Yale success and afterward success to one of my teammates, Tester, and we were like best friends, inseparable my freshman year. She was like the top recruit. She was in 7th seat freshman year. She was like just so strong, out of Australia. And then we hated each other because we ended up getting really competitive for like 2 years, which is not good on a close team. And then our senior year, we like finally got over our shit, and like we're never as close, but still friends. And then we raced each other in the Olympics, which is wild. So it was just, such a funny, like, story. But she really pushed me, and she pissed me off because I was the type where I would get to erg test like an hour before, and I'd be warming up and I'd have my erg and I'd like stretch and I had my whole routine, and she would just mosey on up and not even warm up. And then like I started to beat her, but barely. And she like wouldn't even stretch and just like afterwards leave. And I'm like, gosh, this girl like drove me crazy, because I was like, what kind of, what are you like, what example are you setting for the rest of the team? Especially as seniors, but that just worked for her. Anyway, so long story short, she was second, I was third. I think my time was in college like a 6:42, my best. And then I did have the 6K record, so I was always better at the long stuff. Mia Levy, who's the amazing Yale rower now, who just graduated, she broke that too. So now I'm second on the 6K.
Amazing. I mean, that's so fast. That's so fast. Thank you for that. Thank you for that side tangent of that side quest of, because I think it's important, especially when young rowers who I hope are listening, because it's really for them, is to know that to become a great athlete at anything, especially at that Division I level, it is about embracing the package. And whether you're your teammate that just shows up nonchalant, or it's you where you have to have that preparation, the way that you approach that internal competition is really important. And I think that while you were there, you won those 3 national championships, correct? Luke, I'm kind of leaning on you on this one, because you have that similar experience of not losing a lot of races in college. It's kind of a question of both of you, because I would like to know this perspective from both sides. Is what is that internal competition like? Because I think of it from the outside as like when you're winning well or a lot, it just kind of snowballs positively, but it doesn't, right? Like it's so competitive internally, and when you want to when you have the talent, I think, or you feel like the chosen one, which I definitely both love and suffer from. When somebody's pushing you and questioning you and making you question whether you are the one, that's got to be hard to deal with, especially with still being relatively young in the sport. So, from you two, like when you're in that good of a team, what does that internal competition do both to you and what do you think it does to the outside?
Yeah. Where do you go? Luke, you have an answer?
Yeah, we're
He might
going.
not answer, so
He might just stare at me
I
blankly.
mean, I want to hear. I'll
no,
go.
no. I mean, it's a
Go
really
ahead.
good question. I think, and Taylor, you can tell me if this resonates with you, but in a lot of ways, when it's working well internally, when there is the trust in the team, and when the team is super strong, it's sort of the only sort of fear throughout the year is like, I've got to make this boat. Like, I got to make sure that I'm in the fastest eight because that's the mission. And then once you're in it, then there's that trust that like, okay, we've got this. But it, for us in my time in the Cal squad, there was so much competition trying just to get into that first boat. And it was through that competition that the whole team kind of rises up and the mission's very clear in what you're looking to achieve. And so there wasn't much thought outside the bubble, in the sense it's just sort of like, we're doing our thing here. I don't know anything about what's going on at any other place. I don't care about what's going on at any other place. We'll deal with that on the race course. But even then, who's going to stay with us down the course, right? And you have that attitude. And what's really interesting, Taylor, to me, and then what really resonates is that my experience with Cal was like yours. I was chosen. I felt chosen, that was the school that really wanted me to be there, right? Craig, when he was our freshman coach, and Coach Gladstone, like, they wanted us to be there. And that was that feeling of like, okay, I'm part of something and they want me to be here. And the contrast for me, without going into a super long discussion about it, was like, I arrived on the national team scene and I was like, I'm not chosen for anything here. And I'm not sure anybody cares if I do well or not. And it was a totally different environment. And the environment where I was chosen, I did extremely well. In the environment where I felt I was not, well, that's a totally different story. Does any of that resonate with you and your experience and how it went?
Oh my gosh, so much of that. Yeah, I think my experience at Yale, of course, there were a lot of ups and downs, and it was not perfect. And we have this like these three national championships to look back on. But our junior year, we could have gotten second as a team, but instead, because the varsity finished fourth, we didn't. And so I really felt like we let the team down. At Stroke, I felt like I really let the team down and boat down. And so I put a lot of that pressure on myself. But I think my overwhelming like thinking about my Yale experience is that no matter what happens, you all are there for Yale. You all get to race for Yale. You all get, not everyone gets to go to NCAAs, and obviously not everyone's in the first varsity or the second varsity, but for the most part, like the people that show up race for Yale. And that was just a really hard transition to the US team, because I had gone from this team environment where, it was not perfect, but we really cared a lot about each other. And Will would be really hard on us, but he would give these speeches before practice and invite us to his house. I mean, the first time I ever got to Yale, his dad, he had had back surgery the year before, so we missed that, but apparently he was out for a lot of the spring. And his dad had just passed away, and he invited the whole team to the memorial service where he spoke and cried. And that was even before we started practice, my fall of my freshman year. And so that was and I hadn't even really seen my dad cry that much. So it was almost like this really cool, and I talked to Will about this and I told him, but it was a cool way to be like, wow, this guy cares a lot and he treats us as his family. And having come a long way, being the firstborn, leaving home, feeling really homesick, going to a place like Yale where we didn't get into this, but I mean, I literally felt like I was the dumbest person. I call my mom every day thinking I should get a brain scan because I'm so stupid. Why am I here? Even though I did really well in high school, and it was a different level, and I was used to being really good at things, and I wasn't. And I also chose really dumb classes and didn't really have an advisor, and just felt very lost at first academically. So thankfully I had rowing to feel like I was actually good at something. But anyway, so yeah, Yale for me, I think the difference between our stories though is that I did know I was pretty much going to be in the varsity and stroking for the most part. So for me, my experience was if I do not uphold to what I am expected of, then I am failing, or what I expected myself. So I just held myself to a really, really high standard, to the point where I was probably causing a lot of misery to myself, and putting a lot of pressure on myself. And so when Will was also hard on me, I'm like, that I'm the hardest on myself, Will, like, shut up. But I just felt the weight of the team and the team success on my shoulders for sure, because I cared so much about it and I cared about our people. And then certainly my senior year as captain. And, I felt very strongly that our entire senior team, or our senior class, no matter what, everybody needed to PR in every single ERG test, no excuses. We did that. So a lot to be proud of, but I was like, probably not the most fun to be around all the time.
But that I think that's a mantle of leadership,
Yeah.
right? Like, especially on a sports team. And I think somewhere along the line, somebody has to be the standard bearer. And usually that person has to be able to also pick up what they say. And I think, you had this great career at Yale, and the way you talk about it with such passion is really, I think that's what collegiate rowing was really all about, is when you leave with, you feel like you are part of that institution and that institution is part of you. And it's like, it's really beautiful to see that all these years later, it's still there. But with that, standard that you really did hold so well at Yale, that created that opportunity, which you said you sat there watching 2008, you saw the women's 8 win, and you said, I need this. I want this. It's time for me to go. And so you went into another new challenge. You now go from that environment of a collegiate environment, which I think we all feel is like, this is just gonna be like college, but better. And you show up to Princeton Training Center and you're like, this is not college. So what was that transition like, to go from this? You are literally one of the biggest, toughest bulldogs to come out of New Haven, to Princeton Training Center. Where did you feel like, I can do this right away? Or was there hesitation? Was it the whiplash? Or did you feel like you fit right in? And did you feel chosen yet again?
Yeah, well, I think sort of like kind of two directions I want to take this. One, I'll get to shortly. But quickly, I think because my ERG score was somewhat strong coming in, I did have the luxury of being treated a little better than some people who came in with me, who I still think are amazing rowers and I really respect. So I think because Tom, Tara really cared about big ergs, like I got to sort of be part of that top group, be put with top pair rowers. And so for better for worse, I mean, I don't necessarily think that was fair, but that's just the way he ran the program. And so I think that made my transition easier than it certainly could have been, and easier than a lot of my teammates who came in at the same time, who were, better on the water, I would say, or maybe not quite as fast, but certainly better rowers technically. But I will say, I think, one of the things that what I loved about the training center was just the level of performance and like professionalism, the way that the women would show up to practice, get it taken care of, give everything they had. Everyone held each other to a really high standard. Like that was just so impressive, and getting to be a part of a group like that, where I think the biggest thing key to our success was that it was so competitive internally, that and there was so much trust with the system, for better or worse, that if you knew that if you did what you were told and did it well, then you would win. And that, I think, is also a luxury, because I think recent teams maybe haven't felt that as much for whatever reason. And at that time, it was just, we believed in the program, and part of it is the program has to be good, you have to have good rowers, but then part of it is trust and believing in it, and we just did unequivocally. So there was that. And then for me, in my personal story, I think what kind of was a different level is that so my mom, very close to my parents. My grandfather was a big athlete. He was a head coach of the Denver Broncos, which is cool. So just sports was a big part of our lives. My mom got me into rowing, and then she got sick with breast cancer my junior year of college. And, they just really insisted that I continue to row. So went to under 23s Henley that summer, even though she was sick, came home, and she'd gotten worse, but I was talking to her as much as possible. My parents were like, no, we've got this figured out. We were all kind of in denial that she was dying, frankly. Went to senior year. That was a tough year, I think, because captain, wanting to perform, pressure, not being home. But again, my parents were like, no, you got this. And I think, honestly, it was easier to just call my mom and not have to be front and center and see her disintegrate, really. And then my senior year, we win sprints, we win NCAA as a graduate. I win under 23s. And then my parents came, well, my parents came out to like visit me at under 23s, which was to train, which was great. And I think I was kind of a little asshole probably because I was trying to train. And so I like have some regrets about that, but it was so great to have them visit. And then my first senior team, I made that 2010 boat. Call my mom every day, but at that point she'd like been confined to a wheelchair, but we were like delusional, like, oh, she'll be fine. It'll, we'll get her turned around here and this will just be a new kind of normal. And so we went in New Zealand and it was cool. Like the whole team, even Tom, like wore these pink ribbons for my mom. And so definitely had folks support, even though I was like new to the team. And I called my dad after winning, and that's when he told me she was moved to hospice. So it was just like this whirlwind of like this amazing year for me, like personally or professionally, if you will. But then like this person who I was like my hero and the reason I got into the sport dying. And so it was a weird year. I went home, I got to say goodbye to her. I showed her a video of the race and she was kind of out of it on morphine, but she literally said, like, I wish I could see you in the Olympics or something like that, like race in the Olympics or be in the Olympics or something. And so from that moment on, it was just like, I'm making this team. Like, I can't not make this team. You know what I mean? It's like literally my mom's dying wish, and she's the one who got me into the sport. And so weirdly, like, at that point, like therapy wasn't really talked about as much. And also I kind of like tried a little bit, but frankly, I feel like it was like opening Pandora's box where I was like, I've got this figured out. Let's not let everything out. So rowing was kind of like the way I dealt with it, to be honest. Like I was back training with the team 2 weeks later and just like had a huge fire underneath me. And so I broke my ribs a couple times. I raced in the 2011 World Championships with a broken rib. That was like also my best year. Tom told me, I don't know if this is true, that I broke the American erg record at that moment. Obviously it's been way shattered at this point, but I thought I was going to double up. You get that ego when you're like in that position where it's like, oh, should I do the pair M8 or just the pair? And like, then I got injured and it's like, I'm lucky enough to even be going. So it's funny how, you get that ego and then it's like, and then come 2012, I was injured. I broke my rib again and I was out of the boat for 15 weeks. And I was a mess. Like I was training like 3 times a day. I was like in the elliptical at Gold's Gym, and then I was trying to do Bikram yoga, and then I was running, and then I was on the bike. And so no wonder it took me so freaking long to heal. And Tom at one point called me into his office and he was like, that like, it's just the Olympics. And I'm like, I just remember him saying that. And I like couldn't I'm like, I don't understand what you mean. Well, yeah, that's everything. So I think for me, it just honestly was like about my mom, and it became something that was bigger than myself. And I can get into like, I think trying to train after I kind of lost the fire a little bit. There was this like this cool moment in London, which I'm happy to talk about, that kind of like, I don't know, is a little bit woo woo, but amazing. So, yeah, my experience was it was tough. It was more survival mode. Looking back, I think like, I'm sure I didn't handle certain situations well. I think training at that level is super selfish. And I don't mean that in like a negative way per se. I just mean literally only focus on yourself. I think, you become super one dimensional. So it's like amazing. What a privilege to be able to focus on one thing and do it as well as you possibly can and only do that thing. Like, when else in your life do you ever get to do that? Even in like school, never. But at the same time, I think it does kind of make you really one dimensional. And I noticed that the women who stuck around for longer and longer just became these like really bitter, not great leaders, and not all of them. And I don't mean to disparage most of the people, but I just like didn't want to be that. I wanted to be, I thought there was, and it was a toxic time in a lot of ways. And I still have a ton of respect for those women, and I refuse to like hold any grudges or let any of that stick with me. Because I think I told you this, Dan, but one of the things that I love so much and about what I see like certain areas of the men's team doing at the Charles, whether it's like you guys are going out and then race the next day, like none of that exists on the women's side. And I want to change that because I think it's bullshit. I think we're like conditioned to hate each other. And starting in the 90s even. So I just think it's bullshit. And I have so much respect for women before me, during me, after me. And so anyway, that's a tangent, but one of the things I want to work on.
So go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
One, Taylor, I want to give you a hug if I could. That's the only hard part about this thing. I remember that all happening. I think also like this, you're right. There's a selfishness to it all. Losing a parent's never easy. Losing a mom's not easy. And you know, more than happy to share with you, like, when in further detail, but just want to say with empathetically, like, I get what you mean by the fuel. Um, and just to like, because you shared so much with us, I just want to let you know, like, it's a welcome place. We found out we were having Stella in January on New Year's Eve of 2014, and then my mom passed away and 3 weeks later, and so, my drive to be a dad for her is like that, it's endless, right? So it's endless. And I think, but I also really compensated with that loss with just trying to do too much. And ironically, trying to bring the Olympics to Boston, like making that happen. And so I really value your openness with us. I really love that you're putting that out there for other people to hear. And I think that we all know this, and I got to say it because, like, as a parent, like, I would have done the same thing. I would have told you it was fine. And I would have want my sickness as a parent to hold you back. That's what we parents do. That's what your mom did. And I believe that she was watching the whole time. And man, you're a badass. I just want to say that's just my way of trying to say thank you. And you're not alone. And, you got us as friends. And there's a lot of people out there that when they listen to this, they're going to say thank you too.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Just to go back a second, and I echo Dan's sentiment of appreciate the candor. What was that moment for you? It's really interesting as far as, like, I can't imagine the stress, just more like psychologically, of you're right there, you can see it, there's a ticking clock. It's a finite line in the sand as to when the Olympic final is going to be, and you're either going to be, basically, as they say, on the train or not on the train. What was that kind of couple weeks, if you will, as like, all right, you're back in the flow. There's a real shot of your name being on that short list of being in the boat, and then actually getting named? Because we've had a lot of people on the show talk about, like, that moment of, like, new, or I found out, and it was like, it wasn't a lot of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'd love to hear kind of your take on that, because it's a pretty epic moment for a lot of folks that we've had on the show, and everybody's reactions are a little different.
Yeah, no, it's good. Good question. Well, it's funny. Oh man, I wish I could like ask you guys all these questions too. But, I feel like when, like, to answer that, my brain is sort of going to this place where, when people are asked, like, what was it like? Like, what was it like? What's your favorite memory? And everyone thinks it's the Olympics,
Sure.
but for me, it's really like a set of like specific moments that I think I just proved to myself, like, that I could do it, or that I was strong, and just sort of like overcame something internally a little bit. And so one was, having been out of the water for 15, or just not rowing for 15 weeks. And, if you've been injured, you know what it's like, where you just see people getting faster, getting better, doing all the workouts where you have to sit on the sidelines and it's in front of you. You're right there at the boathouse. You're, going to practices, and it's important to show up, obviously, and show that you're working. But that was tough mentally. And I still have a hard time going back to Princeton, I think, because of that, to be honest. But one of the things I'm most proud of, and so again, I think I was given the gift, which I don't think everyone would have been, to be paired with Caroline Lind after I was coming back. And she was not the strongest erg, so we were probably closer on the erg performance-wise, that me getting back. But she was definitely one hell of a pair rower, and I probably learned how to row from her more than anybody. And I got to row with her right when I got back in the boat. And I think it was like the first week or second week I got back, we started doing these 9Ks in Chula Vista, where every Friday we would do 9K time trial, like for like 5 weeks or 4 weeks leading up to NSRs. And God damn it, we won everyone. And I fucking loved it. Like, that is what I am just so proud of, because I like had to sit by the sidelines for 15 fucking weeks, and I got to win, and I got to start first, and I got to see everybody, and I got to see us walk away, and I got to be with Caroline. And so that just felt so good. And so I think at that moment I was like, kind of proved to myself, like, I think I can do this. So that was part of it. And then we got second at NSRs, so I felt really good about that. We lost to Aaron Cafaro and Elle Logan, who are both badasses and really great. So bummer, but they're amazing. And then, I think once we started, the two pairs got to go World Cup. So it was just us racing. And so at that point I was like, okay, I think pretty much like second strongest starboard. But the problem with that was Karen Davies is always going to stroke. There's no question. I mean, she was seat race, but I mean, and it's so funny with her because she came back and I was like, who is this Karen Davies? Like she hasn't been rowing and I'm faster than her. I'm faster than her on the erg. Like, what the heck? And then you sit behind her in an 8 and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I get it. She makes everybody around her way better and just rises the level of how you race. So raises it. But anyway, so yeah, I think for me it was probably the NSRs. And I was like, as long as I can stay healthy, then I think I can do this. So yeah, when finally, it was funny, I think when the team was selected, I don't think Tom sat down with like the 4 of us really. And so I think I asked him, I was like, so like, am I on it? And he's like, yeah, you made it. So I think that was really, it was very anticlimactic.
Anticlimactic.
He didn't like, call me to his office and shake my hand. I don't remember that. But so it was honestly really nice to have that happen. And the story I tell, I mean, you guys all know this kind of story. I'm sure it rings true for a lot of your experiences. The stories I tell people about how competitive it was is that, the boat that won in 2011, there were 2 women in that boat, the boat that broke the world record in Lucerne, the 3rd World Cup before the Olympics. Those 2 women in that boat did not make it. They had to go to trials and they lost trials in pair. And so it's just like, obviously there are no guarantees. And we all know that, you never really like trust it until you are at the starting line. But yeah, so it was just kind of a wild year that turned out better. Yeah, it kind of started pretty shitty, but then got better, thankfully.
So
And then
just real quick to kind of juxtapose this from the beginning, because when you were first talking about landing there and getting injected into the team system, I found it interesting that, like, I don't know what else to call it other than erg guilt. But
Yeah.
you made this comment that, like, oh, I had this great erg, so I got boated with all these great people when I first arrived, and that wasn't really fair. And it's like, well, you weren't handed a lottery ticket with a number on it that said, like, oh, you get to go, like, you earned that. That was actually your erg score. So, I mean, did it just feel like you weren't supposed, like, yeah, I've got this erg score, but I'm not supposed to be rowing with these people who row this well? And like, and then we see the completion in the story that you just told. So where did that flip? Where did the switch get turned where you're like, oh yeah, no, I'm supposed to be rowing with the top rowers in these pairs, and I did earn this because of my erg score? Like, where did that switch?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think post like the first World Championships I was in New Zealand, because I think that's one that Susan and Aaron won the pair in, and there was, if they had decided to double up, or maybe they didn't get a choice, I don't know. It's always like, you never know if it's your choice or Tom's choice, probably Tom's choice, but they didn't double up. And so I got to race. So there was like kind of a moment there where I was like, you probably might not go, you will go, who knows? And so I think once I raced in that 8 and we won, and I realized like, oh shit, like I'm the best in the world right now in this 8. Like, that's crazy. I kind of came back and realized like, okay, I think I'm pretty strong and like deserve to be here. I just have to make sure I continue to put numbers up and perform in the pair. So I think that like helps with my confidence a little bit.
I'm still stuck on the 15 weeks of injury.
Oh God, it was
right.
brutal.
And but part of it, it's also like it's not you're not the only one that's had 15 weeks is a really long time. But I just think of how many very resilient athletes have had an injury happen in the Olympic year, and it does they wind up getting through that. And I think the question I have is like through all of this, and the question and observation, I do love how you stated that people often ask you what was your favorite part, and they assume it's the Olympics or making the Olympics, or we haven't even got to the race yet. But it's like there's so many favorite parts that actually happen. Yeah. And some of them are actually the silver lining or the evolution or the growth you have from one of the darkest moments. Right. And I think that's what I found is a lot of us tend to gloss over the things that we really had to overcome. Like competition's one of them, injury is one of them. What I've come to find is like whoever we talk to that has a really hard moment, their edge is what kind of gets them through. The one thing that you said you were in that 8 and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm the best in the world. But yet you had to still compete against the women for that seat. You even described how women set a world record and weren't in it the next day. And so through all those really difficult moments and all those growth moments and also the personal moments that you were really going through in this unique story is, what would you say your edge is? Like, what makes Taylor Ritzel the world's best, even amongst the world's best?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think it's like I think part of it is that I do think I'm pretty coachable and can kind of row with anybody. Maybe not always physically, but I learned that after the Olympics. I think mentally and emotionally and like just psychologically, like I really can row and enjoy and make things better with other people or in whatever boat I'm in. And I think that that is a skill that gets lost a little bit maybe in the eight, but if you train, as you guys all know, in like the smaller boats, like it goes a long way because as I'm sure many of you know, on the men's side for sure, but there are a lot of big personalities on the women's side. And so if you're somebody that can just like help people get the most out of themselves and get the most out of each other together, I think that's like pretty powerful. So there's that. And I think the consistency comes with that and just like level headedness and positivity and optimism, that kind of stuff. And then when it comes to actual performance, I mean, I just feel like kind of funny saying this now because everybody is like so mentally strong. But I think what I'm like those moments that I'm most proud of are just like the ability to just like dig. And again, I think a lot of people who row and who row at that level can do that. But like another moment like that comes to mind is on this one 10K erg test, like my arms, I've never had this happen before or since, but my arms and my fingers started going numb and I was probably like 4K to go. And so I just clasped my fingers in the middle of the cage and then just kept rowing and like did my best and still did okay. So it's like stuff like that where like I would never even ever think to stop, that, or like racing with the broken rib, like that kind of stuff is just, I don't know, like maybe glad for pain. I don't know what it is, but it's just like the pain cave and being able to like dig to a deeper level and prove to myself that I can is like I like weirdly like that. So maybe it's like joyful in a weird way after.
No,
Don't worry, not that crazy.
no, no, we're all crazy.
Yeah.
When and it's a crazy that's welcome here. And I mean, I can see it, and it's like it's I could see it, I could resonate with it. I would agree with that. I think the way that you described how you get through all this, um, that that grit is your edge. I think one of the things I love about this is having our friends define it, because
Yeah.
that the ability to feel that you are the world's best is a unique feeling. It's a really unique feeling, and it's fleeting. It's super fleeting because somebody right next to you is going to have that day, right, where they are the world's best. And it's that edge that gets you back.
Well, I think it's also like this idea, and I honestly have been like grappling with this in my life still, and I've gotten better, but it's this idea of like never enough, and that being a huge driving force for me for decades. And then now it's, not really that helpful, but I think it's just that's why like at the Olympics, we crossed the line. My rib kind of still hurt. I didn't like the way I raced. I was in the gym the next day. I was the youngest in the boat. I wanted to go on the pair and do something that never been done before. Like it's just never enough, which is both like compelling and I love that how motivating it is, but then it never lets you like enjoy the moments. Like my biggest regret from the Olympics is like even after, like I had fun, of course, but like I didn't really let myself soak it all in except for like maybe one moment on the podium. And then I was like, what's next? What's next? What's next? What am I doing next? Where do I train again? And so that idea of never enough, I think, is one that has like a double edged sword for sure. Powerful, but destructive.
Do you so with that, we typically ask a question, but I'm going to change it up a little bit around the Olympic final. Like, do you remember it? Do you remember it vividly, or were you just like on to the next? Like, yep, check, mission complete, take my medal, on to the next. Like,
Um,
just curious.
I do. That's a good question. I do actually remember it. I think probably because I've like either recounted the story or thought about it more than I have other races. One quick anecdote that I kind of alluded to earlier that I think is cool is that I my mom died, obviously. She was the reason I rode, whatever. And there was a song that came out in 2010 by Brandon Flowers called Crossfire. And I still can't listen to this day or I like cry, but it reminded me of that time when she died because it's a beautiful song, but came out right then. And, or at least it was on the radio or something. And so I kid you not, in 2012, as we were getting ready, we warmed up, land warm up, get the boat, about ready to put in the water, and there was like a 30-minute rain delay or something. And so we put in slings, kind of waiting near the docks. No music was playing, and the first song they play is that song, which is just kind of wild. So we're like, at that point, it's like 2 years old. It's not like it's like really exactly a like upbeat, fun song, you know. And so it was cool because it just like I don't know, made me feel at peace and like my mom was there. So that was just a really cool moment. And then the warm up, I remember being super nervous and like not breathing properly and my heart rate was elevated. And so there was a moment where I just had to like, I did remember telling myself, I was like, Taylor, you're one of 3 women in this boat who haven't been to the Olympics. The other 6 literally won in Beijing. Like they know what they're doing. You're in 4 seats, so just like freaking hold on. It's not about you. So I kind of had to like, remember that, and that gave me a lot of solace and honestly just confidence. And then yeah, the race itself, I just remember I like way overused my arms and went way too hard, too fast. And so by the end, I was just like holding on for dear life. So that's pretty much what I remember from the race. It was not my best race at all. But of course, you see video and I'm like, great, my blade's worse than everyone else's per usual, So yeah, I remember too. I think it was like
I rode like crap all the way to a gold. I think was it.
So
Caroline said the same, or was it either Caroline or Karen? I can't remember about 12, where they both were like, there was nothing left in 250, and they just hoped somebody
Both of
else was getting it.
yeah,
Was getting
they
it in.
both were like, I blacked out and just was praying that the people in the boat were still going because I don't remember anything for the last 20 strokes or whatever they said.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So,
It was
they
it
were
was
not
epic.
cognizant. Yeah.
As
Yeah.
a fan, Taylor, it was epic, man, to see that repeat. And it's one of my favorite races, that's for sure.
Yeah.
To
Well,
repeat
that's so
to
fun.
repeat something like that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you as a fan of rowing for that.
Well, it's
So-
funny. Susan started like celebrating before we were all past the line. Typical Susan. I mean, she was 2 seat. So I gave her so much shit for that. I'm like, Susan, it's not all about you, okay? Like we all have to cross the line together before you freaking celebrate. Like we're still rowing while she's like,
So Taylor, you alluded to it where it was like, obviously you celebrated a little bit, but then, you kind of were like, the goalposts, we talked about a little bit of the show, like the goalposts move,
yeah,
you summit and then you're like, okay, what's the next summit? So take us a little bit into like, what are you doing now, or kind of, I'm super impressed. You've had an amazing career so far. Obviously a lot longer to go, but what are you up to now? Like what gets you jazzed now? How did rowing parlay into that, or really just even had nothing to do with rowing? Just like were you like, all right, next chapter, next up?
yeah. I can give you like a quick kind of synopsis from London. So, I came home and I was miserable because I was like, oh my gosh, I will never ever not have a plan again or an apartment. I want to move to New York City. I'll have an apartment, but I knew I wanted to come back. So I went and got like an internship in New York for a couple months. It was training on my own. Turns out it's not the same as training with the team because I felt like I didn't take that much time off and came back so slow. But yeah, kept trying to train. And then within, I think like 5 months or no, it was like 3 months or something, broke another rib. So at that point I was like, and you kind of have the confidence, maybe a little bit more power to kind of decide your own fate once you go to the Olympics. So I told Tom, I was like, I can't be here again and sit on the bike and be injured again and then try and make a team. And I'd rather not go to Worlds and just like train on my own and heal. So I left. For some reason, decided to go to Annapolis. I met some people there that I like got to live with and train on my own. And then I went to Boston and trained the single and then came back. Honestly, it was not as like strategic as it could have been. I think needed a little bit more time away to do my own thing. Came back in the fall of 2014. and then trained, got a lot faster, was feeling better, more confident. 5 months in, break my rib again. So it just was like, at that point, there were so many women who had just stuck around and were on the bike for years, it felt like, and never really made a team and were just like dedicating their lives to only training and then never really had anything to show for it and to no fault of their own. And I just really was scared of that. I did not want to be that. And so I decided to, along with Sarah Hendershot, go move out to Newport Beach, train under Erin Cafaro and Brian McKenzie. Erin Cafaro, who you should definitely have on if you haven't, she just was like a teammate that I looked up to so much. The whole team did, because she was not the tallest, but God, so strong and just so tough and overcame a ton in her own training career. And so, anyways, yeah, so left the established system, left Tom, and basically tried to leave in a really positive way and say like, look, and it was truth, like the truth, like I can't make this team. I can't stay healthy. Like I just can't do your training program, even though I loved it. I loved the volume. I'm way more of a volume athlete, but I just couldn't stay healthy. So left, moved across country, drove across country, started training with them. We did a way different training plan. It was wild. It was like, we never did the same, like our tests like at once. We did a lot of sprint stuff. We did a lot of heavy lifting, Olympic style lifting, more like cross training. And I got a lot stronger and a lot healthier, but not faster. We trained in the pair a ton. We like found a sponsor, honestly, which is like a whole nother crazy story. I think I channeled my mom a little bit, where we were staying with the host family there, who she's amazing. She's a hairstylist. And if you ever want to find anybody in a community, go to the hairstylist and they'll know all the people. We like ended up finding a huge sponsor. Yeah. He paid for apartments. He took us, we went to New Zealand. He bought us an M-Pocker. Like it was pretty freaking amazing. Got to train in New Zealand, race there. And ultimately I lost that fire. I had committed to them through 2016. So I had a pretty terrible time in New Zealand. I just like wasn't getting better. And I'm not like Sarah was getting better. That's the kind of training she thrives on. But I am not a like CrossFit short spurt sprint athlete. I love volume. That's how I get better. So anyway, I think mentally I was just like in a tough place because I wanted to see improvement and felt like I'd given up a lot. And like, I think it's just mentally hard when you decide to leave the team. And so you feel like my ego is a big part of it, because I'm like, oh, well, I have to have something to show for this. I can't, like, it's so embarrassing if I like never compete in the worlds again, or like don't win again. Then like, what have I done? I've wasted my time, and like a lot of my time and energy was spent up, wrapped up in that, no career. And so long story short, ended up retiring, not really meaning to, in February 2015. That's a lot of guilt and shame around that. But I think ultimately I actually look back and I got to like mourn the sport and like feel a lack of accomplishment for those almost like 3 years, that I think that really helped me transition easier to the working world than I think I like saw a lot of my teammates who kind of went directly from rowing into career, and then sort of had, not that it's obviously competition or comparison, but it's just interesting to reflect on my own experience, because I think I felt all of those things while I was still kind of training. And then once I decided to retire, I was just so ready to like look forward and do something else. And that I had already kind of like said goodbye to rowing. That was interesting. And then honestly, talk about like, this is where I just kind of trusted my gut. I was living in Southern California. I was just trying to network. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't even know some of the conversations I had were interviews, which is embarrassing. I went to some luncheon where like the cast of Parenthood and some producers were there. And so I just reached out to them and went to their offices and started talking to them, and ended up through different connections, like getting a spot in the mailroom at William Morris Endeavor, which is a talent agency. So at the age of 26, I joined all of those freaking recent grads who are 21, like literally passing out mail, $10 an hour, getting yelled at by agents. And then, but I think I had the luxury of like being older and just not wanting to put up with kind of the rules that everybody thought were true. Like, oh, you have to be on at least you have to be an assistant for 2 agents, or you have to make sure you're an assistant for a really big agent first, or if you're going to leave, you have to go to this kind of person. And I kind of just was like, no, that's bullshit. I'm not going to just take what they tell me to do. I'm going to go work for who I want. I'm going to make that work. And then I'm going to get out as soon as possible, because I know I don't want this. And so I just kind of like didn't listen to the rules, or like the quote unquote rules of what all these other 21-year-olds thought, which I'm sure I would have at that age too. I just like felt like I didn't have time. And so, yeah, long story short, I ended up going to Hulu as an assistant. So it's kind of like this apprenticeship model in entertainment where you start as assistant and then kind of work your way up. And so finally got promoted to essentially like a senior associate coordinator at Hulu in comedy, and then was recruited by Netflix. ended up being a content executive over there, more in like it was a really cool, they don't have it anymore at this moment, I don't think, but kind of this cool team where you got to both like give creative feedback, but then also negotiate the deal and be more of a strategic thinker. Cause I felt like at Hulu, while the creative side was fun, it just felt like that like strategy or, more like business style thinking was missing. And so I would get frustrated because we would like just be told that we're not making something, or that like this might do well, or we have to fight for this, but not that. And so I just couldn't really understand exactly like where we were trying to go with the content. And so anyway, long story short, was at Netflix, and then just ultimately it was really fun, but I felt like I just kind of knew LA wasn't really for me. I never quite felt like I fit, to be honest, and certainly entertainment, where some of the like maybe not as great parts of LA are accentuated. I looked around, I looked at my bosses, I looked at people around me and like the stuff they cared about or talked about or kind of the lives they had. It just like wasn't what I wanted ultimately. And so, and I think like it was interesting because, when you're younger in your career, all you want to do is go to the Emmys and go to dinner with Sarah Silverman and do all this cool stuff. But then when you actually get to that point, you resent it because you're exhausted and you don't want to have to go out every night. And so I was like, wait a second. So this is
All about
everything
it.
you work for, and then you don't want to do it? Like, how is that? That's crazy.
True stories. Yes.
So, yeah. So I just, I'd been trying to figure out a way to like, and the hard part about entertainment too is it's just so specific. Like giving notes on scripts, like a cool skill, but like, how are you going to translate that to literally anything else? So I, decided finally to make the jump and go to business school, and then had no idea what the hell I was going to do after that. But that was more of just a way to kind of transition out of entertainment.
Wild. I mean, also, again, thank you for sharing. Thank you for the synopsis and the detail. It's obvious that you've been around stories and scripts, right?
Yeah.
Like you get it, you get in the flow. It's really refreshing to be part of those two companies as well at like the time where they're both rocket ships,
Mm-hmm.
and they're still both kind of juggernauts there. And so I think I didn't get to live on that vocational side of LA, but I know what you kind of mean. Like you spend some time in LA and you're kind of like, you got to commit to it at a certain point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that what I've loved about Justin, I know you had something to think, so I won't drag it out too much, but your gut takes you through these really wild experiences, but it also takes you out of them at the right time. And that's really cool to see. And it's really cool to see that Vegas nerve is strong in you.
Yeah. Oh, maybe I should spend more time there.
Yeah. Justin, you were going to say something?
No. I mean, it wasn't somewhere you kind of like were like, oh, I'm gonna spend the rest of my career here. But I think that, I've obviously read about, and I have friends there at Netflix, and I understand that culture to be like, pretty interesting, right? As far as like the creme de la creme, quote unquote, the all-star team only, and of this kind of culture, that they're well documented about, as far as like, just for the audience, their company culture. Keep me honest, Taylor, I don't know if it was this way at the time, but it's basically like, at this moment in time, we have the all-star team as our roster of employees. You aren't always on the all-star team forever, so there could be a new all-star that joins the team, and all of a sudden the Patrick Ewing of the team goes off, and the David Robinson comes on, or who, whatever, the Shaquille O'Neal comes into the fold, using East Coast all-star rosters for the basketball fans out there. But
But
yeah, I
Shaquille
think
did finish off with the Lakers, so he is West Coast too.
But at the time, I'm an early 90s Magic fan for our listeners. But yeah, so I got to imagine that felt sort of reminiscent of national team, right? Like, again, and that's just, I'm not putting words in your mouth. I think that that's just what I've heard about the culture. So I'm sure that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think you all would have like loved that culture, to be honest. So they, created this culture code or culture deck, I guess, and it was really written from the very beginning. Patty McCord and Reed Hastings kind of sat down, and Reed being the co-founder, Patty being, I think, like the head of HR, created this whole culture deck, and that's how they started Netflix. And so a lot of it is around this freedom and responsibility idea where, you're adults, we trust you, but, once you break that trust, then you're out. And so there was no expense limit. We literally had like tech closets. You could just take stuff. Like they said, it's freedom and responsibility. What do you think you should do? And so treat it as if it's your own business. And I'm sure people took advantage of it in some ways, but I think Netflix was doing well at the time. They also have this idea of we're a team, not a family, which I have quoted so many times since. I love that because I think a lot of companies say we're a family, but that's not the kind of company you want to work at. I mean, I think everybody knows if somebody's not pulling their weight, and it makes morale tough, right? Like you want to be around people who care about it just as much as you do. And if you're not pulling your weight, then like, sorry, you don't belong here. We want to be a high achieving culture. And so I think a lot of people find that to be pretty cutthroat. They do fire, and they fire often, or at least when I was there. And one of the things that I also loved about it, not the firing, of course, but just the fact that they're so transparent. So I bring that up a lot in like work environments I've been in since, where they were radically transparent more than any place I've ever been. And I think as they've gotten bigger, some of that has changed because it's hard to keep it that way. But I try and bring that into my own sort of work life, where, for example, there was this open Q&A doc where anybody could ask any question. They would put their names attached to it, and Reed himself would answer. And they'd be really spicy questions. The same thing would happen in person at our quarterly meetings, where people would get up and ask pretty spicy questions, and he would answer. And even if it wasn't the answer you liked, or but he would be honest, which I appreciated. We were going through what am I trying to say? What's the word? Oh my gosh, what's that word? When you have to like, you're changing your team and the organization. This is so embarrassing. I can't think of it. But anyway,
Like a riff?
No,
a
it wasn't
reorg?
riff. Reorg. There we go. Reorg. I'm like, no, not riff. So we were going through reorg, and everyone knows a reorg is happening. You can feel it you can taste it in the water. You can feel it in the air. But what they did brilliantly was the minute they decided there needed to be a reorg, the leadership called the teams in, the teams affected, and said, look, we're going to do a reorg. Here's why. We don't know where things are going to land, but here's what we're thinking. Work with your HR business partner. Come to me if you have any questions, and we'll figure it out together. And that's pretty radical, right? And so I was affected by a reorg. I wasn't going to have a position, actually, if I through this reorg. So I had to go and figure out like where to land within Netflix, and it ended up being the best thing to happen to me there. I got to pick the team that I wanted to be on pretty much. I mean, I had to kind of like advocate for myself and really try and pitch why I would be great on their team. But I ended up working for an amazing manager, one of the best managers I've had, and being on a team that was way better than the one that I was on before. Anyway, long story short, a lot about what Netflix did and hopefully still does, I really try and adhere to now. I think the transparency, the fact that like if you're not cutting it, you're not cutting it, and because of that, people showed up to meetings ready. They had agendas prepared. They did what they said they were going to do. They were quick to respond, and it's just a better environment to be a part of, I think.
Nice. Cool.
Not to be so pro Netflix, but
No.
That
go watch Netflix.
It's all good. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good thing to hold on to right now.
Yeah, Karen and I just finished Sirens tonight, so
nice. I gotta check that out.
Yeah. Well, and we have one final question for you, and it's hard because this has been so wild, and I think that knowing that you were at Netflix and Hulu especially, and it's one of those things after kind of the excitement behind Boys in the Boat, and we have this LA games coming up, is I'm real biased, but I just think rowing stories are so captivating because they are so individually personal, and you really shared a huge personal aspect of yours, but they all circle back to the team. And I think that's one of the hard parts about it, is that it's really hard to like see the individualism within a boat, but it really is like the best boats I've ever been in. Everybody is such a character, and I think you've done a really beautiful job of showing what an incredible character you have, Taylor. And everywhere you go seems to find a place for you, and you find a place to excel in those things. And you've done that tonight for us. You've been such a great guest. And so our final question is, if you could go back or forward in time and coach yourself, when would it be? And what would you say?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I'm like, how many chances do I get to go back? Well, first of all, thank you so much for saying that. It's such an honor.
Go back. You can time travel anywhere you want.
Yeah. I think it's a lesson I'm still learning, which is like twofold. One, just like freaking enjoy the process, you know? Like I just, I think we're so results driven and goal oriented. And I mean, I was talking to my sister today about how I tend to think in black and white a lot, and I have a real hard time being okay with the gray and the unknown. And so there have been so many moments in my life where I've embraced the unknown, but there's been like this feeling of like being young and having something to look forward to, and like knowing that I was working towards something and this was like a new adventure, like business school. Well, yeah, that's new, but like you're getting your MBA, so it's kind of still safe. Or like this program I'm a part of now where it's called CEO in training, which is really obnoxious, but it's so cool because I felt like I've been able to really accelerate my career and like be put in positions that I wouldn't ever otherwise have been qualified for. Still am not, but like learning so much by doing. So there's like that unknown, but it's still like kind of feels safe to me. And so I think just what I would do is a specific time is a good question. I think like in those hard moments maybe, or in those moments of like real transition, like knowing what I was going to do for work, that was really hard after stopping rowing. And also just, yeah, okay, so because I'm kind of floundering here, but I would probably go back to when I stopped rowing and give myself a lot more grace, I think, and just like enjoy that moment. I mean, I was so fit. I got to like live in Newport for free for a couple months while I was training and trying to figure out what to do. I had a really great support system there and people that were so kind to me. And I was just so worried about what I was going to do and where I was going to be and if it was going to be good enough and if I was smart enough. And going back, I mean, entertainment, I think it's part of my story. I learned a ton. It was really fun. Like, what a cool kind of world to be a part of. But if I had my career brain on, I would have like gone into consulting or something that like actually taught me business ideals or like some kind of skill set. So maybe there's that component. But I think the like emerging theme, which is more continual and one that I'm still trying to be like for myself to learn, is an embrace. Is just this idea that like enjoy the moment and not like freaking worry so much. I don't know. It's just like this drive, it's never enough piece, I think, is one that I'm really starting to have to like chip away at because it just takes away a lot of the joy, you know? So that's I'm still working on it. I don't know. That was really a great answer, but I think throughout there's been moments of just like being hard on myself and feeling like that's how I get better. But I think it just makes me not enjoy it as much, which is life's short, as we know from our parents. Yeah.
Beautifully, beautifully articulated. I don't think you floundered at all.
Oh god, all over the place.
So, Taylor Ritzel, you have taken us through this magical journey of stumbling into rowing. You actually putting your claws into it, changing to the trajectory of Yale, embracing the national team, going through one of the world's and one of the toughest psychedelic experiences a human goes through, which is the loss of a parent, on your way to becoming one of the most decorated oarswomen the United States has ever seen. I see nothing but you. If you want that lesson to be joy, you will get it because that's who you are. And that's the type of people we have on the show. And we are so fortunate that you shared your story with us. And thank you so much for making the time. And we really hope that you enjoyed your time here at the Metal Factory. And you are by far one of the
Thank you guys
fastest
so
friends
much.
to be on the show. So thank you.
That's all for today's show. Fast Friends is a Metal Factory production. All opinions expressed are our own and those of our guests. If you like our show, follow along or subscribe with us wherever you get your content and podcasts. Thanks for listening.